All right, we are going. So welcome everyone that's here live for day one of the systems series. Today is all about designing and building a referral-worthy client experience. So what does that mean? Basically, what I want to walk through today, we're going to go through a lot. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to go through the actual mapping and like designing process of your client experience. So that means from like lead generation to all the way to like upselling at the very end once they've worked with you, and figuring out how we can build the process as a whole, something super intentional and aligned with your business that delivers every time, no matter what client you're running through that process, no matter how many clients you run through that process, they're all experiencing the same thing, which you've intentionally mapped out and built to offer the most pulled together. That's not the right word, but like most, I guess intentional is the best word to say it, experience for them so that they do become repeat buyers, so that they do become your brand ambassadors and start telling everyone about your business to say how great of a time it was working with you, not only from a transformation perspective that you got them, but also from a professional experience standpoint. Okay, so we're going to go through mapping it out. Then we'll talk about tools. So the giant debate about Dubsado versus HoneyBook, I'm going to show you both. Revel-Office uses HoneyBook, so I'm going to show you also how we use HoneyBook. We did use Dubsado, and then we shifted to HoneyBook actually. And I'll explain why. I'm going to be totally honest and open with you guys. And then some tricks to get you started and how to actually implement some of this stuff. Can you guys hear me okay? I don't know if I keep hitting this. I'm so bad at it. Okay. So let's start, I guess. So again, welcome to the system series. Let me share my screen with you guys quickly. Oh, there's a sneak peek at Dubsado. So as I mentioned, this is the very first workshop in this series. So it's all about designing and building a referral-worthy client experience using HoneyBook. On Thursday, we're going to be going over how to turn one piece of content into 10 or however many you want to build authority and to show up online. So Thursday's workshop is a lot more focused on kind of how can you spend your time working on one piece of content and then kind of work smarter, not harder, to create more pieces of content out of that one kind of pillar piece. So that'll give you more stuff to work with. You can show up more places online. You're sharing your message, which repetition is good when you're trying to build authority. So that's what Thursdays is going to be all about. Next Tuesday, we're going to talk about streamlining your business and kind of centralizing everything in your business to turn it into a well-oiled machine. And I'm going to be talking about different project management apps, but again, Revel-Office uses ClickUp. So I'll show you inside look at how we do that. I haven't totally mapped out that one yet. I might show you some examples of some clients that we've set up. Let me think on that. But I'll basically go through how you can start to centralize all of the information, not only from a project management standpoint, but from like a strategic, let's make sure everything in your business is in one place so you can stop wasting time searching for things and replicating things and all of that fun stuff. And then the last workshop in this series is going to be not this Thursday, next Thursday. Is that how you say it? And I'll show you some fun systems and tricks and hacks and all of those kind of buzzwords to manage your money and just kind of get control of that. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to, myself included, for an incredibly long time, embarrassingly long time. I just didn't prioritize financial management. And when I started to prioritize some of these systems and processes, it totally changed the game for Revel-Office. So that's why it's the last one. It's a big one for me. It's one of the most kind of like life-changing from a business standpoint. Some stuff that I'll be sharing in there, but that is what is coming up over the next 2 weeks. But today, let's focus on, sorry, I'm going to just move us all over here. Let's focus on your client experience, because it's a big one and it can seriously save you time. And when we're super intentional about the experience that we're creating and putting those systems in place, then it can, I mean, again, like I said, not only from a client perspective, make that experience better and make them want to work with you again, but even from a business owner perspective, it'll create so much space in your business to have more time to onboard more clients, or to more space so that you can focus even more on the clients that you have, or open up that time and create that space for you to do even more with your business, or spend more time with your family, or whatever you want. These processes can really help you save like literally hours every week, depending on your client load right now. So, and it prepares you for your client load moving forward. I know, I mean, myself personally, I always had a hard time back when I was doing design stuff, and I'll go over, if you're catching the replay, who I am. I know everyone on the call here knows who I am. So, but I'll run through it super briefly. But when I was doing design stuff at the very beginning of Rebel Office, and I didn't have any of these processes in place, I would have a hard time bringing clients on because I felt like I wasn't ready to take them on yet. And I felt like I was always in a position where I'd had to recreate service agreements over and over and over again, or I had to recreate invoices. And not only was it a time suck, but for me, I felt like I wasn't prepared. So when you're onboarding a client, that kind of chaotic energy can be transferred to the client, and it doesn't come across the best. So I really want to make sure that your systems are set up to really thrive with this. Okay, just checking things, we're good. So that's basically what we're going to run through today. So for people catching the recording, who am I? I'm Sarah Williams. I am the founder of Rebel Office, and Rebel Office has gone through quite a journey. So like I said, I first started doing freelance graphic design. Like I, in university, got hired for the newspaper, even though I had no expense with layout design. And I was working with some organizations on campus, and whenever they would do promotional flyers, I'd be like, that's ugly, like I can make it better. And I did. And then all of a sudden people kind of kept paying me for it and paid me more for it. And it just kind of grew. And at the time I was working a corporate job, in a consultancy firm. And yeah, I was there for about 8 months before I quit. And we've talked to, I know the ladies on the call, we've all kind of chatted about, you know, different corporate environments and how they can sometimes be toxic, and, and mine was. So yeah, I left. And then from design, after having, and this totally ties in with what we're going to talk about today, after having some experiences with clients where the communication channels weren't there. Like this is when people talk about having bad clients, and I sure did at the time, and I was stressed out about it all the time. But when you look back on it and you use it as more of a learning experience, chat, sorry, your designs are stunning. Oh, thank you. I hear you perfectly tuned Dubsado, but these concepts I know relate. Yeah, we'll go over Dubsado too. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. So what was I saying now? Oh yeah, having bad clients. That when I look back at it now, it was the lack of system set up to maintain communication and to have those follow-up checkpoints. The not only project management side of this, where it can kind of trigger follow-ups and keep things moving in the process, but also just from an experience and relationship standpoint. When I look back now at bad clients and when I hear other people talk about it, I like to kind of flip it around a little bit and say, okay, well, yeah, I mean, granted, like there are some people who are just like out to get you, it seems. And that's part of business in the world, I guess, unfortunately. But at the same time, you can always kind of flip it around on yourself to say, okay, well, how can I make sure that doesn't happen again? Or how can I limit that problem from happening? What can I build in place that doesn't add time to my plate, that doesn't add more to me and my to-do list, but where can I build in these kind of catches or systems is the best way. I'm going to say systems so much today. I'm so sorry, guys. But how can we build that in so that that doesn't happen again? So if you want to look through the lens of maybe a client that you're thinking of, where it's like, okay, well, how could I have done that better? Or that was a horrible experience for me. How can I make sure that doesn't happen again? We'll talk about that too. Or if you want to just go look at it totally fresh without that kind of negative lens, that's totally fine too. But I just wanted to, I guess, put that out there because I went through that. And then I realized the importance of a client experience. And it's not just customer service, right? Like there's so much more to your experience that you offer. It's your brand. It's the systems that you have in place. It's everything. So that's really where I started to clue in that, okay, maybe I need to take time, sit down and just build everything out and be super intentional about it. And then from there, Rebel Office kind of evolved into more experience consultant and systems consultant. And then from there, now we're here where we still do design work. We still offer systems and consulting and business strategy. But of course, we also have our community, our membership as well. So that's why I talk about this a lot. That's why systems is its whole webinar series. That's why this specific topic is its whole is its own webinar, because it's so important and can solve a lot of tension or resistance that you may be feeling in your own business. So that's what we're going to go through today. Oh my gosh, the Zoom chat is in the way. Okay. So that's what we're going to talk about. We've already talked about why systems matter for your client experience and relationships. So like I said, we're going to go over how to actually map it out, tools to use, aka Dubsado versus HoneyBook, and we can talk about some other ones too if you have any questions or have heard about ones like 17 Hats, for example. There's a bunch out there. And then some tricks to get you started or some starting points, I guess. So, or tutorials is the best way you want to say it. But I'm going to hop over to, if you want to grab your pen and paper, or if you want to pull up an app that's similar to this. This is Miro. It's like my favorite app to work in for literally everything. I map everything out in here, whether it's for clients, whether it's for Rebel Office. I do our roadmaps in here. I do our like systems. I'll show you actually before we jump into this, like a systems plan. I went through and mapped out like all of the moving parts and functions and things and tasks that Rebel Office does, mapped out any sort of support assets that I'm about to talk about. So it really kind of, it lets you do pretty much anything. And I love it. So I'm going to use this just for visual representation, but if you have a pen and paper, grab that out too. So when you are actually sitting down to map out what the experience is, there's three things that I want you to consider. I want you to consider not only the task, so like what's actually happening, what's the action, but who needs to do it? Is it you? Is it the client? Is it some third party? And then are there any support assets that you need? So like, do you need a contract template? Do you need an invoice template? Do you need a welcome PDF or booklet? So we're going to talk about all of that, and we're going to actually sit down and map it out. So, I mean, fortunately, I kind of know what you guys who are here live do. So we can start, but who wants to actually build it out? Let's use one of you guys as an example. Yeah, you want to go? Okay. So we are going to start with, we don't need this yet. When someone works with you, how do they start that conversation?
Let me get off of mute. That will be easier than typing on the chat.
Oh,
So the
you
first,
can.
the first thing is kind of a questionnaire, and that leads them into my connection call scheduler.
Okay, so a questionnaire like a contact form.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is on your website. Is that where they find it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So that's the very first step. So we're going to put it up at the very top. With that, obviously, one of the assets that you need is the actual contact form. It's the thing that you need. Amy, we can do you after as well if you guys have time. Okay, so then what happens once they complete the contact form specifically?
So they get sent like the scheduling link
How do they get sent that?
through an email.
Okay.
So I email them the scheduling link.
So for you, send email, like a discovery call.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then from there, I'm assuming they book the call. So then an asset to here would be your scheduler, right? And what scheduler do you use now? So there's tools like Acuity or Calendly, or do you use the Dubsado scheduler?
I'm currently using Calendly, but I'm switching over to Dubsado because I want everything in one place.
Yeah,
That's why
exactly.
I'm tuning into entire
Good.
series. I'm like, let's move everything in one place.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I would recommend as well. So like I said, I use HoneyBook with Rebel-Office, and I use the HoneyBook scheduler, and it's like totally amazing now that it's all in one place. I canceled Acuity. It's great. I mean, Acuity is a great option too for everyone that's watching and wants to use it or does use it. Okay, so then the call happens. What happens between them booking the call and the call actually happening?
I want to send them a pricing guide because that's something I haven't been doing.
Before they get on the phone?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So I guess too, something that we need to consider is send email, confirm the appointment. In that email, would you want to send the pricing guide, or would you want to send it closer to when the call is actually going to happen?
Kind of both. Send it there and then just like a reminder too.
And then send email, appointment reminder. That's in that one as well. And then you both kind of have the call, so we can just bring this guy over. Okay. And then, sorry, we'll just keep the flow going. This one's gonna look a little weird, but you get it. Okay. And then what happens post-call?
So post call, hopefully there's a sale, but if not, I give them like a 3-day window on
Okay.
where they can book their service.
Okay, so what we are going to do, there's going to be two options here. So if on the call they commit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like this. It confuses, it like doesn't look right. Okay. We get it. Okay. So if, yes, say on the call, they say, yep, I'm in. And then if they don't, then it goes to something else. So either way, after the call, an email is going out,
Mm-hmm.
correct? So for the no email, what do you want that email to say?
So it would kind of be moving them just back into the lead generation process.
Okay.
So like still like nurturing them, and I understand there's no, but like here's the weekly newsletter where you still have a lot of resources available.
Something like that. Okay. And then for the yes email, what happens?
It is their contract and invoice.
Send contract and invoice. Perfect. So and we'll talk about this, we'll go through this, but in HoneyBook and Dubsado, they both have the option where you can attach the contract and invoice together. So when they sign, they have to pay at the same time, which highly recommend because it just makes life easier. So that can happen at the same time. And then, oh, I don't like that. So from here, we need the contract template and the invoice. Fortunately, with systems, like the two that we're going to talk about today, these are or the invoice template's already populated, which is great, so you don't need it. But the contract template, you still need to have in there to be able to kind of populate with the details of the project. Both of you are in the membership, but for everyone watching the replay, if you're not, there's a service agreement template in there. So make sure that you join the wait list if you want in. We're actually going to be opening up the membership next week for a week. So, okay. So then once that happens, they need to, and they sign. And then it would jump in, and I don't want to, like, this is very focused on lead generation. What you can do now is build out the rest of this process. So basically, once they pay, what happens? Do they get emails with like a welcome email that follows up? However you want that to look like, you can continue to map this out. And if you want, I can send you a screenshot of this after, if that would help. Okay. But I want to make sure, Amy, are you able to chat to do this for you as well?
I had to find where the screen was.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I'm listening, but I'm working on the side. Yeah, it makes sense. Like I create I create workflows for my clients, but like the fact that why haven't I sat down and done this boggles my mind. Yeah. Because it's such an easy thing to do. So
yeah. So it's up to you if you want to work on it now. Otherwise, we can keep going through the process with Ava.
You can keep going, and then that way, like I'm getting an idea, because I guess my question would be, we would do this for each one of our sales funnels from Correct. Start to finish, because like I have different products or services available, and how I capture the lead from that is different from start to finish. So we would go through each one of the services or products that we provide and create this, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, depending on different types of services that you have, I would do it individually, because you're right, like there's going to be a different flow depending on what you're offering.
And then would you also, based on just our previous kind of workshop, would you then also potentially create a different flow based on the product tier or the tier level? Because if they're paying for the most expensive product, you would want to give them a more TLC type of experience.
100%. And that's up to you. So I always find, or what I've done with Rebel Office, is the higher the tier that the product is, or the more luxury the product or service, the more hands-on I am. Mm-hmm. I don't want, but that said, like, and it's funny, I'll go through an example of what this week I've been working on setting up the workflow for Mastermind that I'm launching in the new year. And it's going to be very high level, but I'm still totally automating the onboarding process and the application process, because systems doesn't mean that there's no human touch. Like, you can still add in your personality with all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Like, the higher level product, there might be more in terms of like a full welcome sequence. Once they join, you could run them through this whole elaborate, beautiful, luxury welcome experience. Whereas if someone joined or booked a simple strategy call with you, for example, or in your case, they just wanted to get on the phone for 60 to 90 minutes to do like a health and safety review, then that for you, there doesn't need to be as much like prep and nurturing for that, because the commitment is you're getting on a 60 to 90 minute call. You're not spending 6 months with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, well, to me, then another determining factor would be at that end of that initial call, maybe would be, is there a potential for me to do more work with this person? And then therefore they go into this funnel versus I'm not really interested in working with this client further. And so they get my like, thanks for coming
100%.
Funnel.
And that's what you would want to map out. Like, even if you go through and like what you would do when you're mapping out using these tools or pen and paper, mapping this out, and you get through all of your deliveries. So say you deliver based on one of your product or services. I don't see anything wrong with having workflow options for, like you just said, like if you want to just offboard them and say, okay, thanks, that was great, best of luck. Or if you want to run them through a whole upselling sequence, then you can have both of those options ready to go and built out in your systems to just trigger depending on what you
the
want
outcome of the call.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's something that I'll show you too, actually. For example, and I was going to show you guys HoneyBook after, but I want to show this to you because it came up in the question. So for the Mastermind workflow that I've built out, basically they apply. There's an application form on the Rebel Office website. Then they receive 3 hours after applying, they receive an email just saying, hey, we've received your application. We'll review it and we hope to work with you. And then what I've done is I've set up 2 emails. Both of this happens automatically. But in my workflow, I've set up 2 options for email responses that need approval before sending. So they don't send until I've gone over their application and decide if they're right for this program or not. So there's an email ready to go saying, you've been accepted. I'm so excited to work with you. This is the next step. And then there's also an email saying, denied. I don't use the word denied in the email, by the way. Don't ever use you've been denied. But for me, that's the trigger of the way I called the email. But there's an email saying we don't think you're a great fit for this program at this time. So both are ready to go, and then I can decide which one to send based on my kind of experience. So you can do something very similar where you can have it stop, and that's where you go and you wouldn't continue the workflow. Or you could have it where they accept, and then once that happens, it could automatically send the rest of the workflow. That would be like your upselling sequence. Does that make sense?
I was like, I don't know if that's me or her.
Hi guys. No, it was totally me. That's my internet.
Did I?
There you go. You're back.
Sorry. Okay. I don't know where I cut off, but
I just said it. Yes, it makes sense.
Okay.
And then you froze.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, the joys. Okay. So now everything's reconnecting. Give it a second. There we go. So yeah, I want you to think of kind of every situation. So even Eva, for your example, when you send the contract, say they sign and pay right away. Great. Then you just continue on in the process. But say, for example, they don't pay right away, and all of a sudden they're having doubts. So can you set up anything or have it ready to go in case that happens? So say you send the contract and invoice, maybe you get a notification that they viewed it, but they don't do anything with it. So can you set up an email that says something like, we noticed you haven't signed the contract or paid the invoice. In this email too, like I said, you can always add the human element. So if it's like, if you have further questions and want to hop on another 10-minute call, then in that email you can include your scheduler, or whatever that looks like for you. Or if you just want it to be like a, hey, so glad we talked the other day, I sent along the invoice, I wanted to make sure you saw it, you know, like one of those more like subtle nudges. You can decide what that looks like, but you can also have this totally mapped out and ready to go. And again, this would just, you would have it as like needs approval before sending. So it wouldn't send automatically, because if they pay, then you don't need to send that email, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then from there, they either pay or they might respond. This is going to start getting messy, but saying not interested, even though they said they were, it happens. That's fine. And then now all of a sudden they're back to this no one, right? Where you'd say, okay, no problem, I understand. Make sure you join our newsletter for future whatever. Okay. So you can start, this looks ugly, I'm so sorry.
It's fine, it's helpful. This is my to-do list for today. As soon as you said this is it, I was like, okay, I have procrastinated on this for long enough. I'm going to do it alongside.
Perfect. Okay, so then now, are you thinking of a specific service that you have in mind, or are they all structured very similarly?
There's two main structures, and I'm currently thinking, I love eyeing this question because that was kind of mine too. Like if it's higher ticket,
yeah,
then it's definitely like, it would be a sign and pay, and then a video for welcoming them in, and just more hands-on touches.
absolutely. So yeah, and that's how you can kind of distinguish. And I mean, the great thing about building your systems like this is that you can make them as kind of a luxury experience no matter the price point. But you're right that it might make more sense if someone just spent, say they bought like a $15,000 product off of you and you're running them through a sequence. I mean, anything, whatever your high ticket, if it's 8,000, 5,000, whatever it is, and you want it to feel more special, ultimately what you want to do is that as soon as someone pays you, think about the last time you bought something. You wanted instant recognition that something's happening with your money. Like you don't want to just like give away thousands of dollars and then be like, okay, what's the next step? Like,
yeah, especially for me because you're paying me thousands of dollars so that I can make you tens of thousands of dollars. So like I definitely want it to feel very special.
Exactly. So I love the idea of including, say you send an email, like a welcome email that has a video in it that's linked and you're like embedded in there and you're just like, hey, so excited for you to be a part of this program. We're so excited that we're moving forward on tackling this for you. This is what's going to happen over the next few days to make sure that we're good to go. I love that idea. So is that what you would say once they sign and pay, what's that next step for you?
Yeah, it would be that video.
Okay. So in your workflow, in Dubsado, the language is like once invoice payment is paid, send email, or whatever those triggers are. And then from the welcome video, is there any information you need to collect from them? Is there anything else that happens? Or would it all be included in this welcome video to kickstart everything?
Afterwards, it would then be like another questionnaire, but like a more in-depth questionnaire would then be heard.
So then from an asset standpoint, we would need the welcome video
Mm-hmm.
and then the questionnaire. Great. Now, people do it differently. You can build out your whole workflow from the moment they become a lead to the moment you upsell them. I personally, I don't like things super automated unless it's a very passive product. So if it's a higher tiered product, I like to kind of have a bit more control and know what's going on. So normally I would break out, personally, this is like a personal preference, I would break out the workflows differently. So if there's a delivery workflow, like regular homework going out, if it's a coaching program, for example, then I would build that out separately so that I would just trigger it to say, okay, we're starting now. And then from there, it would be like, okay, weekly, you can schedule out, for example, if you're like a mindset coach, this is an example. And every week part of the program is like a weekly mindset prompt. Okay. Then you can have those all scheduled out to go directly to your client. So it keeps it super personal. It doesn't need to come from a mailing list. You can build those out in your CRMs or your customer relationship management programs like HoneyBook or Dubsado. And that can happen, and you can have all the homework there ready to go. If you're running people through the same program and you have workbooks that you use for everyone, or if you need them to keep booking their next call with you every month, then you can have those emails and those schedulers and all of those assets mapped out in a workflow. Or if it's more ad hoc, then you can run them through this, get all the details, get them to pay, set up the payment processing. And then from there, they're in your CRM that'll track your communication with them anyways, if you want it to be more hands-off after that, which is normally the way that I do it. I don't fully automate the whole process. I normally only automate the onboarding and offboarding. So once they're like, okay, we've fully done our wrap up, then I'll trigger the offboarding sequence to say, great working with you, here are the final files, or have like a month email follow-up scheduled. So after we've been working after we're done working with each other for a month, then an email will go out and say, hey, just checking in on you, that kind of thing. If I didn't upsell them to something. So you can kind of get as elaborate as you want with this. And a lot of people do automate the delivery, and that's totally okay. So it's more what works for your business at this time. Anyways, okay, so that's kind of how you would go through it. And then what this does is, and again, Eva, I'll send you a screenshot of this so that you have it. You can just do what you'd like. But what this does is that now all of a sudden you see the specific emails that you need templates for. You see the different PDFs you need to create, or the different templates and documents that you need to draft, the videos you need to film, for example. So now all of a sudden you kind of get a checklist of building out your workflow. So you're like, okay, in order to build out this workflow, I need these things to fully build it out. So then it gives you that next step of, okay, that's what I need to work on next. And then I can go in and actually build it out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Cool. So, and let's talk about it now before we jump in. From a experience perspective, what are some different ways that you can think of? I'm going to put you're just like in the hot seat now, that you can elevate the experience. I can give some examples, but you already mentioned the welcome video. What other ways can you elevate and kind of go above and beyond for an experience with a client?
Yeah, I think case studies, sending them like a case study doc of like, these are past results. A case studies document, trying to think too. Because I agree, I don't want to automate everything.
Yeah.
So like the beginning aspects, like I'm fine with automating, but like more for me, it's a lot like you're working with me one-on-one. So it's really saying that. Oh,
Yeah, so
sorry, I got distracted
yeah,
by
I know.
the chat.
So Amy said I created hard hat stickers that I plan to mail to new clients, which I love. And I saw them on Instagram and they look so good. But
Well, for
yeah,
me, it would be that beautiful Rebel Office card that you have. I actually have it on my other desk, not here, but it would kind of be sending something of like you're ready or like the mission statement of the
yeah,
company, and then it would
this is,
actually be this book, sending them a book actually, because I love it.
stop sharing. That's this one. Is that what you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about? Yeah, so those are very small ways that if you just think about like, how can I bring in my brand, and not even from a visual standpoint necessarily, but from an experience standpoint, what fits. So Amy, your example of a hard hat sticker because you're in health and safety, that makes so much sense and it's so smart. And then not only is it them advocate or kind of being ambassadors for you wearing around your branding, which is great. Swag's always a great touch. But I can't remember where my train of thought was going. It's gone. I felt it leave as I was saying it.
Adding in branding to make your client experience better.
Yeah. No, it's not coming back. That's okay. We'll just keep moving forward. That's my life. Other ways too are, I mean, similar to Amy, but if there's, again, if it's a more of a luxury service, you could do gifts. Like I joined a mastermind program with Melissa Griffin, and we got like a giant gift box, and that was part of it. That had a sweater in it and like a mug and a journal. Like it was this huge thing, but it was very aligned with the program. So adding special touches, it's good to think about what's actually on brand for you. You can do so many things, whether it is through the onboarding process or if it's throughout delivery. It doesn't need to be something elaborate. It could be as simple as sharing a book list that you've created, or sharing some articles that maybe you've written and they were talking about it and you're like, okay, we discussed that last time. Or maybe you build it into your workflow where every month it creates a task for you to send them a follow-up email with something a little bit extra in it, whether it's an extra resource or a recommendation or something. If you start to think about first, okay, I guess let me say this first, build out the skeleton, like build out the necessities that you need. Always make sure you're sending a contract. Always make sure that you're sending an invoice, whether you're getting payment up front, which I recommend to everyone, at least a payment, a portion of it. And get all the necessities out. But then once it's all out and you have this visual representation of like a giant map, and say this like goes all the way down the page because you've mapped out your whole process and it's great, then go back to it and say, what's adding value in this workflow and what's not? Like what needs to be here? What maybe like feels like I'm trying too hard in one area, or, like you can go through and kind of feel it out to say, where can I step up and where do I need to like step back from? And
Mm-hmm.
then from there you can work through and sit down and then start going through your to-do list of developing the assets and building out the workflow. Okay. So yeah, similarly with what we did with kind of this lead to onboarding process, you would want to do with offboarding as well. So it never hurts. And I mean, you guys know, and I talk about a lot, kind of your client flow and what's the upsell, what's the next part of the journey for them. If you don't have an upsell at this point, that's fine. You don't need one. Like Ava was saying, as long as you have somewhere to point them to nurture and maintain the relationship, that's a great place to start. But if you work through a service and you know that there's kind of like a next natural step that they would take, and you develop a service around that next level that they're at or that next thing they would need, then you can build out an offboarding sequence that would upsell them that next thing, that would share information to say, Whether it's right away, it depends on your relationship with the client, whether it's right away and you upsell them on the last call that you guys have and you say, hey, it's been so great working with you. Just so you know, I'm about to launch this, or I have this other thing that could really help with this. Do you want to proceed? And you develop or move them into that whole new workflow that you already have set up for that other product or service. Or if it's more of a subtle upsell where you offboard, maybe you wait a week or two and then run them through a whole launch sequence of some new thing that they could do. So that's, again, something to think of. But one thing that I always want people to include in offboarding sequences is a feedback form or request for testimonial. It can be awkward asking for testimonials. That's why a lot of people don't do it, especially because you don't want to get negative feedback. But if you build it into an automated system, it's no longer you sitting there typing it out, being like, I wonder what they're going to say. It's your system sending an email that you typed out when you were in a good headspace, sending them to a form, or it could just simply be an email that says, I had a great time working with you. I would love your feedback, or if you could provide a testimonial, that would be great. Whatever you want it to say, you can automate that so that it's kind of like a barrier between you and asking for the testimonial. If you are totally okay asking for testimonials, then that's great. And you don't need to worry about this, though it never hurts to automate it. It's one less thing you have to worry about in the process. But for people who it might not like feel the best all the time, then adding it into a workflow is a great thing to do, because then all of a sudden you don't even think about it. It's not on your radar, but then you still have a way that's collecting that feedback, positive or negative. They're all important and you can learn from both. So it's always really good to include that in your offboarding process. Okay.
Absolutely.
Are we ready to look at some tools? Does anyone have any questions about the mapping process?
Are you using the free version or the paid version of Miro? Because I've checked it out, but I haven't really dabbled any further into it. But I don't have Visio, so I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing here. A sidebar question, but I guess works
Yeah,
through
no,
systems. But
I'll talk about tools all day.
Yeah.
No, this is the paid paid and free version look almost identical. I have the paid version just because I needed more than 3 boards. So with the free version, you get 3 boards free. And for a long time, I would like use them. And then whenever I needed a new one, I would like delete an old one and like just keep kind of like cycling through them. But now I use this with all of my strategy clients. So any coaching or consulting I do, like every client has a board and we'll sit down and map out whether it's their business or their sales funnel or whatever it is. We like do it all in Miro.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Curious. Thank you.
There's no problem. They're super, like I haven't used any feature, I don't think, that wasn't with the free version anyways. It's just more like I needed the ability to share without like adding users and stuff. Okay, tools. Any other questions? We're good. Where's the chat? It disappeared on me. 1 second. Oh yeah, sorry, Amy, I just saw this. Book list, boom, nice. 1 second, I'm like, oh, unreal. Yeah, see, that's perfect. So this recommended books for occupational health and safety, you could just include that, even if it's part of your offboarding sequence. So if you don't share it throughout the process with your clients, it's just like a nice added value. Say you're done working with them, but you want to upsell them at some point, or you want to nurture that relationship, then say, hey, just wanted to check in on you. I was thinking about you and we talked about this, that you can, okay, I'll talk about that in a second. Wanted to include this book list because I thought you would like it. And that's just like a really nice, feels like a personal touch, even if it's automated. Do you know what I mean? But with that too, you can have these emails similar to what I just showed you in HoneyBook. You can have these emails ready to go, but just have it as a trigger of like needs approval to send, because then you can edit it. Like you can leave blanks and then customize it every time that it nudges you to say, okay, this email needs to send. Then it'll open up the editor of the email where you can go in and like add personal things and then send it. So it's nice where most of the work is done for you, but you can still build in those personalized touches throughout the process as well. That's just a little side note. That's unreal. That's great. Okay, so Dubsado versus HoneyBook. I would love to know your guys' opinions, because I know you've played with, Ava, you use Dubsado. It's a great option. I've almost all of my systems clients use Dubsado, almost all of them. And it's great. So both have very, very similar features. They both let you track your financial goals. They both let you process payments through them. I'm not sure actually with Dubsado. I know in HoneyBook, it'll actually process the payment instead of just sending the invoice. So like every time that like a monthly invoice is sent, it just charges the card instead of sending an invoice. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know if Dubsado does that, but that's like a pretty minor thing. But both have schedulers. So if you're using Calendly or Acuity, you can bring that in-house so it's all streamlined and in one place. They all have they both have very similar workflow builders. So if you're kind of between the two, they're both great options, and I'd recommend. They both also, I don't know if I think HoneyBook also has a free trial. So they both have free trials that let you play with it to see what you like most. If you've ever hired a coach or consultant or any sort of service, you've most likely been run through either a Dubsado or HoneyBook process before. But if you haven't, then I'm wondering if I can show you. This is my email. Maybe I won't, because I'm going to use this as a recording. I'm not going to go through my emails. But both emails look pretty similar. I chose HoneyBook over Dubsado because generally I like the usability of HoneyBook better. But that's that's a personal preference, to be honest. But they both have this dashboard where you come in. It lets you track where your lead source is coming from. It's great. So let me just see here if there's anything we specifically need to look at that we can't look at in HoneyBook. I don't think so. Interesting. I've tried them both. Why did you end up, Ava, with Dubsado over HoneyBook?
For me, and just in general, I have found HoneyBook works really well for designers and photographers.
Yeah.
But almost all my business coaches like pick Dubsado or like mention Dubsado, and I just like it because of the client portal that you can set up where everything is in one place for your clients. So it's not just their contract and invoice, but even their welcome video can be in there. And as we work together, it's like, oh, that's embedded into your client portal.
Yeah, that's great. That's a very good point. That is a nice aspect of it. I also want to show forms. This form section in Dubsado is where you would build out all of your templates. So in comparison, under templates for HoneyBook, it's the same. They're all over here. And in this case, it's just in column form. But here is where you would come in and drag and drop any of your templates. So if you have a service agreement template ready to go, you would just copy and paste it into here, add in any forms. So what's nice about this builder is that it's similar for all of the different types of forms that you can do. So the fields available are all the same across the board. So it's nice from that customizable standpoint. Whereas the templates in HoneyBook are more structured and like less customizable, I guess you could say. So for example, a brochure is a bit of a different example because you can add in a bunch of different things. But for, say, a contract, then it's just a text field. So it really depends what you're trying to build. And sometimes you have to get creative with what you're building. If you want it to be more interactive, then brochure is probably your best bet as you build it. But yeah, so just to run through these tools, those are two great options. You can't go wrong with either. And Amy, if you're considering HoneyBook, or either of you, here, let me post it in the chat. But I have, I'm an educator for, there we go. I'm an educator for HoneyBook. So I have this discount code where you can save 50% off your first year. So go ahead. That's also in the benefits section of inside the collective on the platform, if you want that. And then Eva, I'm not sure if you pay for it or not, but here's Dubsado. That's for 20% off for your first year or month, 50% first year or month for HoneyBook as well. So those codes are there if you want to use them. But just to run through quickly the different functionalities of HoneyBook and how I use it. So the dashboard is here. It's great. Normally, if there was like a new inquiry on a form, or if someone sent me an email and I hadn't, like, all your notifications and stuff are here, but they also often come here if there's like an update on a new project. And then all of your projects are listed in here, the ones that are in progress, completed, where you're at with different things. They can, and some of these, so HoneyBook sometimes updates it. I think Dubsado does the same thing where it'll just move it along in the process. You can go in and actually customize these steps, which I need to do because it just keeps moving it along and they need to like stay where they're at. But anyway, so then from within here, you would click and be able to click on the different project. I think, so for example, let's do one that isn't confidential information. So for example, this isn't a client, this is community, like setting up a branch for Rebel Office out in the Okanagan Valley. So, but for example, there was an application form that was sent. We set up a call to talk about this, decided she was a good fit, worked her through a workflow. So it's not worked her through a workflow, put her through a workflow. So you can do this not even just for service delivery, but for example, brand expansion like this. But what's great is that it tracks all of your communication in one place. And from here too, you can, once you're, sorry, that must be really annoying to watch. When you're sitting or like come into a project, you can send, I have a regional leader contract. So I would send that contract and it's all maintained in one place and it's all centralized, which is great. So similarly, when you come to tools, you would sit down after you've gone through this map and said, okay, I need this template, I need that brochure, I need this pricing guide, all of that stuff. You would come in and build those out. Even all the emails, both systems come with like template emails. I always like to go in and personalize everything because some of them are pretty like sterile and, you know, never hurts to add your brand into everything that you do. So go through the templates and update those in case you ever need to use them in a pinch. But most workflows that you build are going to have custom ones. So for example, for the Abundance Accelerator that's launching in the new year, there are very specific emails that I needed to communicate for that. So you create them and then you build them into your workflow. And then let me think, templates, brochures, contact forms, which I'm gonna show you something super quick at the end, and we're running, it's gonna be, are you guys still okay for time? Okay. So contact forms, this is like your lead forms. So for example, an application form or a general contact form on your website, or say you are a public speaker and you want to have a speaker inquiry form, you can create that form and have it only on the speaker page, so you know where those services are coming, or that you know what workflow to drop them into. But for example, you would just come in, whether you're building out an application form or a contact form, you can style it all in here. And then from here, I'll just show you now because we're here. You can, that's not what I want. You can either send it as like a button. So if you want to send it as a link to people, or if you hit publish, every contact form, whether it's in Dubsado or HoneyBook, has an embed form. So if your website is, say, on Squarespace or WordPress or literally any website builder out there, you can normally embed custom code wherever you want this form to show up. So you would grab that code and then it would be embedded. So this form is actually here. And this totally isn't a page that people should be able to get to yet, but it's fine. But now the form's directly on my website. So my branding is kind of integrated into the workflow. I can maintain branding. I can have stuff on my website. I can keep control of it. And over the kind of client experience, you can keep control of that. And then you don't need to just send them to, say, this link that HoneyBook gives you. It's not as pretty, you know, like it's nicer, I think, to have it embedded with all of my stuff that I can control versus this. But it's the exact same form and it'll trigger the exact same workflow. It'll do the exact same thing. But it's kind of nice to be able to embed sometimes. So in Dubsado, for example, Ava, if you go to your template, your scheduler template, and you build out all of your settings for your scheduler. So you would set how long it is, what your availability is, same with what you would do in Calendly. This little link button here gives you that code. So that's where you can embed it onto your website or wherever you want to put it. Or similarly, the direct link, like I just showed you. So those are kind of the two options. And likewise, if you had your Dubsado scheduler on your web page versus, I think what's it look like? Yeah, so that's what it looks like. So sometimes it's kind of nice to have control over your branding, but that might just be like a me being picky thing. And then from here, you can similarly, I'll just show you, you can set up different session types for your scheduler with HoneyBook, set your availability for each day, all of that fun stuff. So both tools, again, are great. Both tools have very similar features. You can still do reporting, you can track payments, you can look at your calendar, you can do all of this stuff. And the whole point of it is to centralize. This is supposed to be, or they design them to be kind of like your business hub. And I know, Amy, at the beginning, I think it was before I hit record, but you mentioned that you don't know how it all works with ClickUp or a project management app. We'll talk more about that on the what is it, next Tuesday's call, about centralizing and streamlining your business using ClickUp, for example. But there are integrations that you can build in, normally using the tool Zapier. Have you guys heard about Zapier? But let's say, let me show you here. While we're here. So say we find HoneyBook and we find ClickUp. So say every time that I get a new lead, I want it to go somewhere and ClickUp so that I can track it. Say I don't check HoneyBook as much, even though I really like HoneyBook's notifications and like the mobile app, I really like. But say, for example, you wanted it all in one place, or you wanted to track requests. Then you would go in and build that Zap so that they're integrated. So say a new inquiry. then it would create a new task. And then from here, it actually goes through, it'll like force you to go through the settings to choose what folder you want it to go to in ClickUp. I don't know in HoneyBook. I know Dubsado, the integrations between Dubsado and ClickUp are limited. I've never tried to link HoneyBook and ClickUp, but it's funny. I just tried to do this for a client. My dog might bark soon. But every time they had a speaker request, they wanted it to go into ClickUp. The Zap with Dubsado doesn't let you pick the type of inquiry that comes in. So any inquiry, whether it was like a waitlist one for a VIP days, whatever, it was all just going to this one folder, like it didn't let you pick. So that's the unfortunate thing. I'm not sure if this one will, but it's always fun to explore what sort of integration Zapier does. So it's totally an option for you.
I'm not really, so I've heard of Zapier, but I guess my question would be from a security standpoint, like I would have to do the research to see what type of confidentiality like information is being transferred between it, because it's just another potential third-party data security. So yeah. I guess I would have to do my research to see if I'm comfortable with that. But yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, HoneyBook does keep it very neat and tidy. So if you have ClickUp and keep it for business management and task and project management, but you want to maintain and curate and nurture relationships for your clients, in HoneyBook, there's nothing wrong with, I know I talk a lot about centralization and everything needs to talk to each other and it's all working together. There's nothing wrong with having two separate apps that don't talk, as long as you're using the full functionality of both. You know, like it gets a lot when you say have HoneyBook, but you're still using HelloSign to send contracts and PayPal to send invoices and Acuity to book calls. That's not necessary because you have an app that would do all of that. Do you know what I mean? So, but it's okay if for project management and business management, that's in a separate app. So if you're not comfortable integrating those two, that's okay.
I guess my really only question, and like when you're using HoneyBook, because it is the one that is most like GUI friendly for me based out of all the ones I tested out. But one of the things that I'm just not comfortable with is like having HoneyBook anywhere to my clients, because like to me HoneyBook is not a very professionally sounding platform or name, and it implies something risque potentially, right? Okay. So is it can you do it 100% your brand, and there's no sense that it's being done by HoneyBook, so like the emails aren't like sent by HoneyBook and stuff like that is my question, I guess.
Let me check. I know like before I even started to use HoneyBook fully for, of course, I
can look it up, but
it's
I was
okay.
just kind of curious because
I'm curious too. I know that when I've been someone else's client for HoneyBook, I'm trying to remember what it looks like. One second. I'm going to, just while I'm not sharing my screen, I'm going to pull up an example.
Like, yeah, so for that, for like creating a project site for a client and stuff, like what is the URL that is sent to the client, and is that all branded with my URL, or is there?
No, it's not.
Okay. I can do a little bit of my own deep dive research, I guess.
I do think it still says HoneyBook, but there might be a pricing option, which is what I was trying to find. Your brand everywhere, customized workflow. I am not sure. Trying to think of and I can't remember her last name now. Creative, this one. trying to think, but I think I've always had a HoneyBook account, which is the problem because I would have always been seeing it.
I could set up a dummy account and then log in through an incognito window and kind of see what that experience is. But yeah, I think I'm looking for something that'll help streamline some of the things that I want to use for 2021. So
for sure,
I haven't fully committed to anything yet.
And I think, I'm not sure even with Dubsado, maybe look into both options. Because like Ava was saying, there's the client portal aspect, like both kind of have like a client portal area, but Dubsado's is more like specifically, it's designed as a portal from a client perspective. And I'm not sure if you can customize that or not, or if it still says Dubsado. I think it still says Dubsado. Like, for example, it would be like rebeloffice.dubsado/portal or whatever. So I think the name is always in there, but let me know if you do some digging, and I can help you find some solutions to figure that out. Or yeah, it depends. I mean, and it depends too what you want to use the functionality for. If you want to just use it to send invoices and contracts, but then nothing else, then they'll just be getting the file. Do you know what I mean? Like you can send emails and it goes directly to their inbox and they're not seeing HoneyBook, but at the end of every HoneyBook email, there is like a little link at the bottom that says view full conversation and it'll open up in HoneyBook. So
it's just a thing for me. I don't know. Like I work in a very male dominated industry.
Yep.
And a large, currently my large portion of my clients are very, like dirty boots, boots on the ground type of people. And so like HoneyBook just is, I don't want to be associated with honey, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents, but I'll look into Dubsado. I haven't really taken a perusal of that one yet.
For sure. And I mean, this is a great conversation to have because it's important to know the different options out there. So like, for example, and it depends what you want to use it for. Like if you want to be able to track client communication and just have stuff set aside, even if your contract template isn't housed in the program, say you use HubSpot. HubSpot has a free CRM and it tracks email communication and lets you write notes, and like keep track of conversations that were had. You can track phone calls and all of this stuff. And what you can do is just create all your email templates in there. And that could be a better option for you, where you have emails that are kind of pre-populated with links to templates and everything. It's just the ability to build out a workflow isn't there. So you can have stuff and it can still save you time because all of your assets are in one place and centralized. But in terms of like fully automating that process, that capability might not be there depending on what you go with. Does that make sense? So there's other options, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah,
no, that makes sense. Yeah. Right now I'm using a smorgasbord of tools. So I would like to streamline it. Like I use Calendly, I use FreshBooks, I use G Suite. So yeah, I am looking to streamline it a little bit just for my sanity. But I haven't found one yet that kind of meets all of my needs.
So what might be a good thing is whether it's Dubsado or HoneyBook, setting up like a test client, like you said, kind of like a dummy account, and just test what that experience feels like on the other side and see if it's aligned with what you want it to be. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, absolutely. Because like, for my, 40,000, I'm like, for a $40,000 client, I don't want them to feel like they're getting a $10 experience.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's exactly what I'm talking about. This whole series or this whole webinar is just to make sure that what you're creating is aligned with the level that you want your brand to show up at, Great. Okay, so if you guys have any other questions, I guess my biggest takeaway that I want you to run with this is to really take the time up front to be intentional about what that looks like. So like I said, brain dump everything that you can, and then go back 1, 2, 3 times if you have to just say, that doesn't fit, this fits, something's missing here, and just really build it out first. And then go in and build out all those assets and the templates and the emails. Do that all before you start building your workflow, because going back and forth, one, is a pain in the ass. But it's really great to just have that, and then you can build out your workflow all at once. And I guess once you get to that point, test it before you run a client through it so that you can make sure everything's working, whether that's with a personal email that you have that you use to sign up through a lead form. Walk through that whole process. Make sure you know how everything's set up, especially if you hire someone to build out this workflow for you. There are systems consultants out there, a couple in the membership actually, that will like go in. So it's always good to test and like do it for you. So it's always good to test and go through the process once, maybe twice, so that you always know, and you can experience from the client side what happens, to say, okay, that feels good, or that felt kind of weird, I need to fix that, or whatever it is, or the response time there wasn't good, that needs to come up a little bit more. Really just test it out and work through your own workflow first. But yeah, I mean, it's a big job, and it's often overlooked, and it's easy to kind of, we've talked about finding one tool that will do this one thing, that'll solve this one problem this one time, and then you keep using it, and it's kind of a band-aid tool, instead of sitting down to say, okay, what do I actually want to create? How does my business actually want to show up for future and repeating clients? Great. Do you guys have any questions, last minute questions before we hop off?
Everybody pray for me as I do this all day today. I have been procrastinating on doing this, and I'm like, okay, it's time to get it done.
Okay, well, I mean, you have me on Voxer, so feel free to just like send me a video of your map, or if you use Miro or another tool, send me like the link to it. I'm more than happy to like go over it with you.
Thank you.
Wait, you guys just checked out another tool, Voxer? Oh, stop talking tools.
I have the shiny object syndrome when it comes to tools, and I fully accept it. Like at this point, I talked to Sarah earlier about you. I was like, Zoom isn't working for me 100%, so we're going to try this. Then we're going to try this. Shiny object syndrome with tools is the worst.
Yeah, and that's why, like, it never hurts to, I'm all, like, there's so many tools out there. I'm all about trying them to see what works, but don't, like, cancel them if you can. Like, there's nothing worse than having accounts for, like, literally every tool out there. Find the one that works for you, and it's okay if your business evolves and you work out of that tool. Stuff changes. I went from Asana to ClickUp, right? Like, it, and Dubsado to HoneyBook, like, stuff changes, but just make sure that anytime you do introduce a new tool into your business, that you're taking the time to use it to its full potential, so that you're not all of a sudden spread out and have 20 tools when really all you need is 5. But yeah, Voxer is just another communication. And we didn't talk about communication too much, about the systems that you can use to maintain communication with clients, but take the time to think about how available do you want to be to your clients? And then 2, what tools support that? So if you want to keep communication with your clients to email and say, I respond to you, make it very clear. This whole building your client experience is also about setting expectations. You want to build in your workflow where you're setting those expectations with your client, because that's really where, when we talked about bad clients, that's where there's like different expectations, and that's why those experiences happen. So whether it's up front in the contract, repeat it like 10 times in the contract when you're available. My clients know I don't answer them on Fridays. Like, I am available from Monday to Thursday. So normally, I mean, sometimes I'm working on a weekend and then it's just confusing. So try and like stick to your boundaries when you set them. But building in those communication tools and figuring out, okay, I only want to be available by email, or I have a scheduling call where clients can book a call with me anytime, but on that scheduler, I make sure they can't book a call with me 24, like it has to be over 24 hours out, so that you're not like blindsided in 15 minutes. Oh shoot, I have a call with a client, but I'm like out grocery shopping. So figure out what that communication support needs to look like for your services, and then figure out how that can be built in and those expectations can be built in as well. So Voxer, for example, is like a walkie-talkie app. So you can text, but you can voice note, just send, it's like a texting app. Same with WhatsApp. And Slack is another option that I have clients use with their clients. So think about what you need and then start to explore those options. I mean, if you guys ever have any questions or say, this is the experience I want to create, but I don't know what that looks like or what the best tools are for that, then just ask and we'll figure it out. Yeah.
For me, you mentioned Slack actually, and I've been looking at that because I want to create kind of like a private community where I do like webinars and kind of what you do within your Facebook group, but I don't think that my clientele will join me on Facebook.
Yep. Slack's a great option.
And link's not there. And so I've been looking at Slack and then also Mattermost.
Okay.
And so Slack, when you join Slack, Slack owns the information, where Mattermost, you can actually host it yourself. Oh. So there's a different kind of information control that comes into that, because I do deal potentially with like confidential information. And so I want to be able to tell my things there. But yeah, I would love to talk about Slack. At one point, maybe we could have like a community group call where Slack is a theme.
So actually Thursday is the co-working call if you can make it. We've changed the time. So this is for the membership for everyone that's watching the recording. It's at 9. Oh, that doesn't work for you then, because 9 a.m. Eastern is 7 a.m. for you. And then it's a 2-hour call. So if you want to hop on there, if you can, or we can set up a totally separate, if that's something that you guys would find useful, a totally separate call to talk about tools. We can do that too.
I would love a call. I will try the networking call, but yeah,
no worries.
Life.
I know. I get it. So, yeah, that's an option, or I'll post in the members only community and we can figure out, if that would be useful for other people, or you and we can hop on a call. So, okay, good. Well, it took an hour and a half of your time, but I'm glad this was helpful. I'm glad you guys are more focused on mapping out your experiences. Good luck. Thinking of both of you. But honestly, it just takes like carving out an hour, 2 hours of your time to really just focus on it. And then from there and what's great about mapping it out actually is that you can start to see what tools you actually need. So yes, we talked a lot about HoneyBook and Dubsado. If you have a client experience or a workflow that you map out, and you look at it and you're like, I don't need all that. Like I need this, this, and this. Then you can build your system, and there's still so many tools out there that you can have working together to achieve what you need or want to achieve. So that's the great thing about mapping it out, is that you can kind of get a 30,000 foot view to say, okay, this tool actually makes more sense for me versus this one, based on functionality and integration and all of that fun stuff. So happy mapping and happy Tuesday. If you guys have any other questions, you both know how to contact me. Anyone catching the replay, if you have questions, feel free to send me an email to sarah@rebeloffice.ca, and I will respond to you when I can. Okay? Bye, guys.